Welcome to Show Studio. It's London Fashion Week. Thank you for coming all the way to Victoria from very spread out shows to help us unpick the season so far. We're going to be talking about the Christopher Kane show and also what's been happening in London so far. There's lots to talk about with Christopher Kane because it's an interesting time for his brand. He's just launched e-commerce and this is the first time he's live streamed a show. So we can kind of unpick his digital strategy a bit. But before we kind of dive into our discussions, I'll let you guys just introduce yourselves, starting with you, Char.
I'm Charlotte Roberts and I run Mosh Print magazine and I'm a stylist.
I'm Nellie Eden. I'm a freelance journalist and co-founder of female collective Babyface.
Hello, my name is Lucy Norris. I'm an historian, writer and creative consultant.
You all look a bit Christopher Kane, like you with your gingham and the pin.
Yeah.
It's quite good, well done guys.
I was thinking about the gingham.
Yeah,
I don't look Christopher Kane short in my big jumper.
You look quite sweet.
Oh, thanks. It's actually my ex-boyfriend's. He left it like that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Anyway, as I was saying, what do we think of London Fashion Week so far? Because it seems it's a strange time for Fashion Week in general, as we've talked about on a lot of the panels, because obviously there's so much change in terms of what people are using their shows for, see now, buy now, all of that. But it feels like it's kind of opened the playing field in a way where you've got the big brands like Burberry who are kind of pushing forward this new agenda for the shows, but then you've also got so much young talent, and then you've got the brands like Christopher Kane and also people like Mary Katranzu Erdem who kind of sit somewhere in the middle of all of that. What's our take on what's been happening and the highlights, lowlight?
It does feel like a city of two halves, definitely. Like Matty Boven, obviously, like all the fashionista lot was very exciting, and like Matty got a lot of traction, and like deservedly so. The Molly Goddard show, I think, was my favourite.
Did you love it?
It was so good. I think it was her best, and it just had like that vital energy that you associate with London. And also like the clothes were much more kind of like she developed, obviously, and did like t-shirts and trousers, and it was, you know, as well as obviously her signature dresses. I thought that was like a very exciting London Fashion Week moment that couldn't really have happened anywhere else.
It was a good step up for her.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
The soundtrack was amazing.
Yeah, like really spirited and everybody jumping around. It's like feeling part of something that Molly's been like slaving away at for years and years and years. And it felt really sort of elegant and together, but really playful as well.
Yeah.
And it feeds into that sort of lovely, like that Simone Roche of femininity that's really coming out of London.
Everything at the moment is so. My girly project was like so ahead of the time.
Yeah.
Plug showstudio.com/project. But it is crazy how like but it feels like the new guard. It's interesting because like people like Christopher Kane. I was speaking to Christopher about this recently, where they kind of got sort of titled for a bit as the kind of party dress brigade, and he finds that very frustrating, and I think, which is understandable. But it's interesting that the generation coming up after them, they haven't exactly kind of gone against that. Like it's still like very, very girly, very embellished, quite saccharine. It's quite interesting that.
But it's got a whole different audience behind it, and it's got a whole different attitude as well. So it was, I mean, London was turning a little bit sort of waggish, for want of a better word. You know, it was all of those sort of great dresses that you could see on sale at Matches. You know, they were all just, you know, those cocktail dresses, and it was becoming quite sort of formal, but in a bit of a waggy, you know, kind of way. And now, of course, all the femininity is coming through, but like you said, with the girly project, there's a real like punk vibe behind the femininity now.
A bit of a riot girl.
So it isn't exactly. So it isn't. It's coming from a very different place. It's all knowingly feminine. The other one was quite sort of, you know, they all had their, like Kane had his dress, Peter Pilotto. They all, you know, and then you start falling into that sort of like you're sort of servicing retail rather than a vision, but now it feels much more fun.
Yeah, even so people like Ashley, it's like really feminine. It's all Swarovski'd up, and obviously Ryan and stuff. But what she does is kind of interdisperse it with skater hoodies and t-shirts. It's like a really relaxed new kind of femininity, but hyper girly.
And what do we think of that generation of designers? So people like Christopher Kane and Erdem and Mary, because you know they're all very supportive of each other, which is really, really nice to see. But what do we think of how they've carved out their businesses? Because someone like Christopher Kane is obviously a different example because he's now part of a luxury conglomerate. Oh, show starting. We can continue talking about this. But a lot of them are independent, and they have built these kind of quite grown-up businesses, which is definitely reflected in the aesthetic, which we are seeing here.
Definitely. I mean, he was so young when he started out as well. He's what now, only like 33 or something, and he's got this.
And also his aesthetic when he started, you know, those neon dresses, if you Google like Christopher Kane graduate collection, they were so unfashionable at the time. Like, I interviewed him recently and he was like, oh, everyone at college was trying to be mini Margielas, and then I was doing my
neon
glitter. So
like,
exactly, he kind of was that.
The lace, I loved it though.
Yeah, the neon lace, it was a moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Can we have the music? Yeah?
But it doesn't...
Ben's looking at me stressed, he's like, no.
Like you're saying, even though relatively he's so young, it feels like there's a huge generational gap, like you say, between the new wave and Kane and Palotto and Mary. It's so grown up comparatively.
Yeah.
I think that Kane is like he's referencing his own archive. He's come such a long way in such a short space of time. You know, to understand your own codes and your own signatures and your own shapes. He works with different materials. You know it's Kane. You know it's a Kane collection, and he's now started referencing older collections within new work, like almost Prada would, and he's doing that with great traction.
But those are the kind of designers that he's obsessed with, so he is obsessed with like a Miuccia Prada. I'm not saying he like apes that aesthetic, but I think it's interesting that...
He's always really open about that though, wasn't he? Like from as soon as he started, he was like, him and Tammy were going really high end. It was always luxury, it was always premium, it was not about sort of streetwear.
No. I think that he's trying to do more digital friendly stuff. Obviously he's launched his e-commerce, but you know they're making a lot of those the letters that they've done, the personalisation, which you can, like the bags had them on there.
Like his bag that he did whenever they launched them with the buckle,
the buckle
that was so clever.
The seatbelt thing.
Because that was also
really
obviously like accessories and resort where it's commercially viable to do so, but it was, like you say, very self-referential and very intelligent commercially.
Because that's not something that London designers have ever been particularly strong at, which is doing these kind of it accessories. If you think of like Alex Ryan with his bag, Parenza Schuler with the Pre-S one, you can't really think of like a London.
But with Kane, everybody remembers that squidgy gel-filled clutch with the coloured gel. That was just such, I will always remember that bag. So he has got these little cultish.
I think more than Mary and people, it is more commercial, it is more mainstream. They do have touch points into pop culture. Those
like
pieces.
that dress there as well.
That's his graduate collection. But I like how he references himself, and I do still think that what I like about it is it really doesn't look like anything else. Like there's a lot of the London shows where like he's a designer, he's not like a curator. You know, a lot of the London new guard, even someone like a J.D. Ramsden, they're like, oh, I assemble references, I'm good at pulling from here, pulling from there. This feels like it's a designed collection. They're not kind of looking at some old Balenciaga or what have you and pulling it together.
I'm seeing like, I said this before, like there are sort of a connection between what he's doing and what John's
Polaroids, that's so cute.
And what John's doing at Margiela. And then I saw the MM6 Margiela collection, and I thought it was a Christopher Kane diffusion collection because I think Margiela's referencing him back. So they've got the little headscarves and the little sort of those lilacs and blues and stuff like he had in his last collection with the flowers.
That headscarf was from, this is a good fact, there's a Barbie book where they dress Barbie in fashion stuff. It's a Japanese book, and there was a section in it that was like Barbie and Margiela, and the headscarves and the makeup and the hair and the MM6 presentation were a reference to the Barbies in that book. Or like Instagram a picture from it.
But he did the headscarves obviously in the main line as well. But that mainline collection reminded me of what John's doing at Margiela. But now I'm feeling like there's a connection. There's something going on.
It's Stephen Jones who does the headwear.
He did the headscarves.
Okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, so he's done hats for this.
But the clothes, this sort of like falling. I mean, now everyone's doing this Fairmont falling off thing that everyone's doing. But I don't know. There's this sort of
they've got Crocs
offness.
Well, he's the king of an ugly shoe.
I seriously think they've got Crocs on.
I think the biggest thing with him actually is, and I was thinking about that a lot this season, going back to what we were talking about with the girlishness, is he is quite widely copied. Like even things like, like when he did the florals embroidered onto the leathers, and that seems like so normal now, but it wasn't normal when he did it. And it's the same with the kind of neons and like the really ugly clumpy shoe.
He did the fluoro motocross jacket.
Exactly.
Of course, it's such an iconic piece of his, the biker jacket, and
doing
it in snake skin, and that is just everywhere.
And like bin baggy type fabrics. I think this is kind of really harking back to graduate collection days though, isn't it?
But it's amazing, the embroidery on that.
And even with those velvet dresses, that same baby doll shape that he just keeps going back to.
Yeah.
The hats are really good. I love his collaboration with Stephen James. I think it's really unexpected and it is just brilliant, and it twists the looks really well.
It just epitomises sort of English eccentric, doesn't it? Or is it so English?
But I don't know, it's English in a weird way, because obviously I think there is a lot about London in it, but then, and Stephen's very English, but like Christopher Kane brings this weird Scottish element to it, which I think is kind of amazing as well. There's a kind of,
and
I
like
like
you
that
say,
about
the
it.
like untrendy sexiness in a way that you don't, like London is not sexy, it's like scruffy and
sexy
cool.
is not cool,
and exactly like
that's that Prada thing, isn't it? That ugly sexy.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah, he does ugly really well.
But it's also always a little bit fetishy with him. Like I love that about him, because he's actually like really sweet and lovely, but it is a bit like sick sometimes, like very deliberately, you know, like when he did like fur with bin bag fabric, or like with this, the way like, you know, he did the dresses that were like writhing bodies.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting, like how even though he has reached this point, like we say, where it is an adult brand and it's a very luxury brand, it's really, really cheeky. And I think I like that you can get those references or you can leave them. With a lot of the younger designers, the references are very upfront and it's very much for face value. Person, it's face value. Whereas with this, I really like the nuance to it, because I don't think there is a lot of nuance in fashion at the moment, particularly because of Instagram and like this pressure to sort of have immediate visual punch.
It's definitely intelligent.
Yeah.
He was saying, wasn't he, he's like, no more oversized hoodies, please. And you look at this collection and you can see why he might feel that frustration. Everything is so laboured over and so detailed. Like you said, it's all in the detail and the nuance. The more you look, the more you get. It's not a slogan t-shirt, it's not something that you can just Instagram and be done with.
I think it's difficult though in many ways, because it's like there was this kind of like really intense minimalism that was like the height of chic for so long, the kind of Celine effect. And then there was this like real casual thing, which Vetements have obviously like really pushed forward. And I think it's kind of, where does a designer like Christopher Kane sit? Because it is quite eccentric and cluttered. So in a way, it's been helped by the kind of Gucci maximalist thing. But then it's very refined at the same time. And I think it's just hard, that kind of those waves that come and then suddenly like everyone wants to look a certain way. At the moment, everyone wants to be wearing like beat up jeans and great shoes and like a jumper. So it's just hard to sort of place
yourself. Exactly. If you think about like the Gucci eccentricity that everyone's obviously like flocking or has flocked towards, this is great because you could wear a hoodie with this stuff. So it's that great stuff that has got that like vintage look, because it is so worked and the craftsmanship's there. And actually it's clashing the craftsmanship with sports, which is interesting, rather than wearing the head to toe uniform like them on Dropout or a Gucci put together chinoiserie doll. You know, it's like, you know, it's a total look affair, isn't it? It's a bit kind of gross. I'll be seeing lots of that in Milan, I'm sure.
I have like a real soft spot for Christopher Kane though. I think as a designer he's really amazing.
Well, he happens to be like such a lovely person as well, and I think that sort of he just seems kind of humble.
But he just tries really hard.
And
I really like that.
Like, he's really honest about how he's saying like the creative process really kills him. Like sometimes he feels really trapped within it. And I don't think anybody's that honest about it.
No.
And even though he's kind of that open and that candid, actually I think the brand is still mysterious in a way.
I think that does come from, and I'd like to talk about this more, which is that kind of thing of staying offline for a while. I think it doesn't ever feel like it's been too much sort of shoved down your throat.
No, because his hype moment was pre-Instagram in a way, which is like lucky for him.
Lucky escape.
Because like we've got those images in our head, but they're not they're not like digitized.
No, like exactly. He did like a Topshop collaboration, you know, really fast, because you think about that now.
It doesn't feel like you're saturated by it.
Because he's like, he can pattern cut and he can cut cloth, and like you said, he was around not pre-internet, but
pre-social,
pre-Insta, then there is this authenticity, which I think is something that I'm kind of getting. You know, it's that sort of feeling that you had to kind of be around in those times. You know, you can all Google it, don't get me wrong, but it didn't arrive, you didn't get pushed down your throat.
But do you not think that's part of the reason that he can so successfully reference himself? Because it's like, you can Google it, but actually if you Google his graduate collection, there's maybe 4 or 5 quite good images to see. There's not a huge amount, and I wonder if that's why I think it's much harder for newer designers to kind of repeat in the same way, because they're very much on this like new thing.
Yeah.
Whereas with him, like stuff like we were looking at it's kind of the neon things from the graduate collection, the flowers, which are like a constant motif, the kind of like tacks and staples that he was doing. And that feels
the sticker book. I was trying to Google it earlier, and like you said, there's like 3 or 4 images.
Exactly, and that makes it exciting again for a new generation. But
yeah, like even when he did those like transparent slides with the crystal embellishments or the crystal embellished jeans, there's like a real archive of work there. But like you said, it I think it didn't saturate the internet to the depths that other brands have. And then actually you become sort of very, you're a victim of your own sort of hype, if you like, because people that are obsessed with being on Instagram, they're obsessed with the action of being on Instagram. They're not really particularly obsessed with what they're looking at. They think they are, but you're kind of just becoming part of that sort of like myopic world. But his feels like he hasn't maybe fallen victim to that. I mean, Miuccia Prada, she was very anti-Twitter. I remember when people were tweeting when everybody was on Twitter, and she was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to spend 4 months creating a collection for you just to judge it in a few
But then
seconds.
it's interesting that designers have all the designers who were sort of in any way slow on the uptake with digital have all sort of come round in the end. Like I don't think Christopher Kane was necessarily I don't think he was anti. I actually asked him about this, and he was like, it was more a financial concern. Like it takes a lot of money to build a really good website. It's not like you can just have like your maid doing it in your bedroom. So he was like, I wanted to put money into like pattern cutters and hiring staff.
Like a proper design.
But he did get this reputation for being like anti-digital, because he didn't have like a website and didn't have didn't have e-commerce. So it's interesting to see.
I think Burberry is like, you mentioned Burberry right at the top of the panel. That's the brand that has like created this new sort of like kind of paradigm. You have to be this now. You have to be. Burberry was saying, we're not a fashion label anymore. We're a digital being,
lifestyle,
or we're an entertainment. Fashion's now entertainment. They've really like that. Fine, let them do that. Let them do that. But whatever. We just can't. You can't just live your life trying to be somebody else. Kane is who he is, and I'm really not that fussed about whether he has got a website or not. I guess younger kind of millennials that.
I guess it's for e-commerce, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just
But
that
who's
big
buying
thing.
it? I want now. We're looking at his e-commerce site. I was thinking that today. I was like, when do I see people wearing it? When do I see it in the flesh? And like maybe Fashion Week is the one exception. And I wonder if that's a concern. I wonder if that does play on his mind. Who is his new market?
He had a great wholesale business. I mean, this stuff was just flooded everywhere. You did go on to Net-a-Porter matches.
Like that was,
You don't see it so much now?
I don't think I see it so much.
His like petal jumpers and stuff, however many, 4 seasons?
I remember that, the sign.
That was his like kind of hype moment as well, like post the bandage dresses.
But then I do think quite a lot of his stuff you don't necessarily recognise as Christopher. Particularly, actually, I always think this with the menswear. Like I'll see someone wearing something and I'll be like, oh, that's nice. What's that? And they'll be like, Christopher Kane. So I wonder if it goes slightly. It's
under
not
the
really
radar.
like a J.W. Anderson where you're like, that person's wearing J.W. Anderson.
That's good.
I suppose you kind of have to be in the know, maybe for some of the house signatures in a way that you don't. You're saying it's not so dogmatic as like JW or whatever.
It's less seasonal as well in terms of like, obviously when you look at the runway shows, you are like, oh, this has a definite aesthetic. But I do think you see a lot of the same pieces brought back each season, which are obviously pieces that are doing well for them.
Yeah, like we just saw the knitwear. Like I think of a cardigan when I think of Kane. I think of knits, which I think is really great. He's just trying to sort of lay down some nice commercial foundations. Not everyone's going to want to walk around looking like they're a poster
I
for
also
JW.
think it's also just like thinking beyond the fashion audience. Like I think about this so much at Fashion Week. It's like it takes a while for people to sort of like catch up or save up for a piece or something, and it's like if it's there one season and you like it and then it's gone the next, like
it's not an investment.
Yeah, it's not exactly, and I think that actually has quite a small, it really appeals to the fashion crowd, but I don't know if everyone wants to shop like that.
Well, even like Vetements, I know it will come up in every panel discussion, but they're like, sorry, but they, because also everyone's into it at the moment, but his, you know, the dresses, like essentially it's a tea dress. Remember, like the Kate Moss Topshop tea dress, for God's sake. That is like what everyone's buying, and he's going to introduce that like season after season, maybe with a slight twist or like a more of an asymmetric hem. But that's interesting, and like two people who are kind of polar opposites, I guess, in terms of where they're situated, are doing, you know, following similar business models essentially. But I mean, he's like Kane, like I don't know how he does men's like resort, ready to wear, pre-fall, like
exhausting.
It's a lot.
And he does fantastic pre-collections.
He
He's
does.
always had one of the
They're not
strongest.
fillers.
They're not fillers at all. They're not. They are literally like, you know, when like resort and pre-fall, you know, people, I mean, I was following it, we all were, you know, some of us I'm sure for quite a while, but it didn't really, obviously it didn't get the airtime, everybody thought, but he was, you know, him, Stella McCartney, they're not filler collections.
But do you not think that's where fashion, like going back to them, like everyone, but like, you know, they have quite like deliberately not done a pre, and that's why they've moved their show schedule to show in January, because it means their mainline collection is basically serving the function of a pre-collection. It's going to be in the stores much longer. Is this an example of where we do need to, like, I don't think the answer is either having see now, buy now, fully embracing digital, blah, 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 or staying in the current system.
Yeah.
Do we need to have something a little bit more in between, where designers can sort of like still have time before their clothing drops into store, but not have this kind of... I just think that the setup we've got at the moment, where these main collections aren't at the main collections, and it's bizarre.
You just end up cannibalising your own craft because you're just having to move it so rapidly that quality gets lost in the shuffle. It's inevitable. And the problem with brands like Vetements is like, you know, is it a joke? Are you the joke? What's the joke? You know, it's like, what about just wearing some clothes? And like, I suppose that's what Kane is it's like, he takes himself seriously, it is earnest, but it's kind of, that's kind of his appeal. And it looks like it should be something that's made slowly, saved up for, treasured. Vetements, like you say, it's Fruit of the Loom with something steamed on the back or whatever. It dates before you can even buy it. But there has to be there's a room for Vetements.
But do you not think we are in that age? It's interesting to sort of get, particularly with Mush Pit, like get your perspective on this, because I feel like we're in this age of like irony, like people want to dress in a silly, like you see it so much. I'm always surprised by looking at like kind of like cool young girls at the shows, and like they tend to be dressed in a way that is like semi-ironic. There's always something that's like...
It always look like they've gone to Walmart. They're wearing like American dads, like ill-fitting clothes.
But but there is this thing, like it's an ironic logo, or it's a brand that you'd forgotten, and there's such a climate for that in fashion, like seeking out. And I wonder if
I think because
that will move on, because that's what's allowed brands, I think, like Vetements to thrive. It's this love of a kind of like, it's basically social media, but on your clothes, like a silly kind of quite pithy status update,
it's
or a
kind
comment,
of like
or a
clever
reference.
dressed up as stupid in a way. If you do it right, like those students who do it well, which I think is like the kind of appeal of it so much. And also you look at their Instagrams, and like it is ever knowing, and obviously like intense satire people will get sick of, so there has to be some, like you say, like a level of somewhere deep in their earnestness, like alongside that like satire, but
otherwise it's empty. Otherwise the message or the statement just is like reverberating around its own references, and it's just hollow. But I think that fashion did for a minute take itself too seriously, and so it's kind of important to have people like Vetements to be like, hey, come on guys, like it's clothes or whatever. But it is that thing of, it's like a nod and a wink, isn't it? Or that's what it was when it first started out. It's like you knew Vetements by the extended sleeves, or the asymmetric hem on a jean, because otherwise it was just a jean. But now it's so oversaturated, they're gonna have to pull back.
But I just find it so funny that like that's actually being peddled by a brand that's sort of appropriating this don't give a fuckness type thing, but it's actually like incredibly like I don't know, it's just funny that they're kind of mimicking this sort of postmodern sort of dropout, but it's all marketing. I'm Vetements.
It's tiring.
I'm like,
but it's cynical.
I kind of like, I don't know if it is that I was really in this like frame of mind, and then I interviewed Demna recently, and I like kind of changed my mind, like because he
you
was
don't
like,
think it's cynical?
I think the biggest problem with Vetements has been the press and communication around it. Like there has been, like, how many more articles can there be about how it's revolutionising fashion? And I think it's like been turned into this beast that it's perhaps not. It was basically a brand that did very, very, very well with buyers. And all this stuff has been written around it, like it's trying to do this and they're trying to say that. And like, when I spoke to him, he was like, kind of really like...
We've made the monster.
No, not even that. He was
not that it's a monster,
really
but we've created all of this hype around. And like,
well, he was like, I don't even think they did that intentionally. He was like, it's just pragmatic. He was like, it's clothes, and he was like, that's.
I mean,
there's
even the
no
name
concept.
is literally clothes.
Yeah, he was like, there's no concept. It's not political. Like I asked him about like the political connotations of the hoodie.
That's interesting. He didn't say it was political.
He was like, it's not political, and I was like, well, you must think about that with the hoodie. Like the hoodie's your main item.
I want it to be political.
And then he was like, I was like talking about Black Lives Matter. I was talking about. You know, class structures in the UK, and he was really receptive. He was like, that's really interesting, and he'd had a conversation with an artist like a week before who uses hoodies within his work. So it's not like he was oblivious to it, but he was like, that doesn't inform why I make hoodies.
Implicit,
and he's like, it's just pragmatic, and he's like, but all this stuff like anti-revolutionary, he was like, it's not what we're trying to be, and it kind of. I felt quite refreshed by it, but I was like, it's us, we're the problem. It's fashion journalists writing these pieces about how they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. And I'm like, they're trying to make a successful fashion business. He was like, when we changed our trade schedule, we weren't trying to like stick two fingers up to the system. We weren't trying to like revolutionise anything. He was like, we just want our clothes to be in store longer and change our business model so it makes sense.
Maybe there's not enough exciting stories
there
around.
isn't.
I feel like everyone
that's exactly
hungry for content.
No, there isn't. That's it. It's like poor journalism. It's like, come
he
on.
actually said that. He was like, it's really ironic that commercial, which was a word that was so dirty in fashion for so long, which we are openly commercial, and he was like, now that's being seen as like the most avant-garde thing there is. He was like, we just want to make some clothes.
No, and I remember when they first started showing on the schedule in Paris, and I was like, Vetements, I love this, because, you know, I was like, it's just clothes. It's great. And it was just such a palette cleanser just to see really useful, cool things. And Hood by Air were also playing around with, you know, the iconography of like the American wardrobe and, you know, all that. I'm sure Raf will be doing a little bit of that hopefully at Calvin. But, you know, and I loved it. I actually really loved Vetements, and I love Off-White that shows in Paris. No one talks about Off-White.
No one talks about Off-White.
Where's Off-White?
I love it too. I'm like, okay, you know, it's like, let's give these other people some airtime because this Vetements thing, it's revolutionising fashion. I'm like, well, you obviously.
It just makes for a good headline.
It makes for a good headline.
My mum knows what Vetements is. You know, it's just like
there's so much other, you know, great stuff going on in fashion.
But that's, I think, the problem for like bringing it back to someone like Christopher Kane. That is the problem. Is like fashion jumps on these bandwagons, and it's like this idea of being the it thing all the time. And I actually just don't think a brand like Christopher Kane, and you can see it from this collection. Like, yes, there's a lot of really intriguing pieces that like are really, really amazing and interesting and like. Beautiful and riddled with references, but it doesn't suit it's not going to be the one where you see the it sweater the May the Bridges I Burn light the way, anything like that. It's not a brand that like does well as like an it brand. It's a brand
you
that
might see it on a red carpet, you might see it in somebody's, you know, very exclusive wardrobe, fashion week. That's it.
Clothes you need to concentrate on.
You do,
Which I think, we're
but I don't know how many of those sweaters he sells with the K on them, but I recognise them instantly when I see that logo that
I also reckon it is things like you mentioned the cardigans, but also things like just like a really good little black skirt with an interesting detail on it, or like a nice, like, you know, sweater with like a slight cutout.
I definitely think like sweaters, jumpers, and cardigans.
Lace cutouts, you know, that Stella kind of riffed on, and then that kind of underwear is outerwear. I think of as him. The Lolita from his Lolita collection, those ginghams, any kind of splicing.
Like a jacket,
like a Molly Goddard skirt there. That's cute.
I do think the underwear as outerwear thing is interesting. Like the look 24 when we were talking about his, and 26 as well. When we were talking about his graduate collection. But again, it's like it has a lot of visual impact, but it doesn't have that, and I mean this as a compliment, it doesn't have that kind of like gimmicky, instantaneous visual appeal that things seem to need to have at the moment.
It's not Instagram friendly.
No.
But it is keying in with the times as well. You know, it does have this sort of falling away. You remember Michael Vanderham? What happened with Michael? Like, where did he go?
I always think that about Fashion Week. And you're like, people just drop off the schedule.
No, but like I see a lot of his kind of stuff that he was doing coming up a lot in design work at the moment.
Let's find him.
he was referenced.
On the panel once, we were talking about someone, I don't want to name who it was, but it's in our archive, and Alex Fury went, "Isn't she dead?"
What, just because she's not a success anymore?
No, he just genuinely got her name wrong and thought it was someone.
Oh my God.
I wasn't watching
No, very much still alive and kicking, thank you. It's like one of those hoax deaths. It's like these
But a
things
lot
start.
of the designers from like his era, like Daniela
Danielle Scott.
that Michael Van de Ham, that
Mario Schwab.
yeah,
like,
that was 2006.
Louise
era.
Golden. I mean, I was looking at some of the alumni from like the MA at St Martin's, and I'm thinking, yeah, there's like, you know, Richard Nicol and Jonathan both went, you know, it's like 5 of them, you know, that have gone under. And for a reason, I'm sure they've, you know, everything happens
Well,
for a reason.
Jonathan's now at DVF, Jonathan
Amazing.
Saunders, and that collection was and that's great because that's a
Amazing.
really good fit. And
That is a really
feels-
good fit.
such
That
a
makes
good
total
fit.
sense.
And and that's nice to see, but I do think it's hard. Like that's why it's interesting to see like how they've all developed in their own way. Like Erdem, Mary, like obviously very independent. Christopher Kane, like part of a group, and it's like it's no mean feat even to have got to this point. Do you know what I mean? Like I think it's amazing that some of them have even got to this point because it's so easy to drop off the schedule.
Like Sibling are doing really well now. I think at one point it was quite punishing for these designers that were just like, oh, we just need a break.
But they were doing, you know, it's about, I suppose, cash flow then comes calling, and you have to do things like, you know, you collaborate with the high street and you do those things. But like this generation seems like you're saying, at once kind of really established and revered, but in the same time a bit lost in the din. Like I don't, you know, they're not the shows that people talk about anymore.
But I wonder if they care in a way. Like I was at the Erdem show this morning and I was looking at it and it was like so beautiful. Like so pretty. And I know that doesn't sound like the most exciting word. And I looked at it and I was like, actually, there are going to be loads of women who want to wear this. There's going to be loads of women who buy it. There's going to be women who go into his lovely new shop and enjoy this or want their wedding dress from there or whatever. And I was like, does he care that he's not getting like a cover of Days?
No, he really does.
Probably
I had a
like,
great
you know.
chat with Erdem once, and I was like, you know, we were talking about people being copied and stuff, and you know, high street, whatever. And it did feel for a long time that the likes of him and Kane, they were waiting for this break, but yet they were just feeding the high streets, Topshop and everything.
Oh my God,
You know,
completely.
and even if you were doing a collaboration with them, you know, they would still go and copy all your work. So it's all that awful stuff.
Can you imagine?
And he said, you know what though, I don't care. He's like, because no one that shops at Topshop's going to buy an Erdem dress. He's doing these trunk shows in America. He's making money.
You,
knows
you
his
did
customer.
see that at the show this morning. Like it was a real, like,
Discerning.
going back to what I was saying, in this climate where it's like, it's hard to understand why something is high fashion because it's like so simple. It's a hoodie or a pair of jeans or something. You looked at the Erdem show in the same way actually that I'm sure it felt like looking at those clothes like in the flesh, and you're like, nothing can like like there is a reason to spend those money, and that's a bigger debate, like whether, you know,
But this
clothes
can't be
should that
replicated
expensive,
either.
but exactly.
So luxury.
But
The
all of this
accessories
is so
are so-
worked and layered.
But I think that's obviously
So
what they need
worked,
to do to build businesses, and a lot of them do. Like particularly, like I always think Mary Katranzi is a really, really good example of this. If you look on her Instagram, like she is all over the world. Like she's got these huge, and same with Roxanda actually, huge client bases, like particularly places like the Middle East, like really, really good at getting out there. And I think sometimes we're in danger, particularly in London, where we like obsess over these new young things that are very, very cool to a very small group of people, and the press for them gets so extreme, and they actually are never going to be able to catch that up and have a viable business. Like I was thinking about that with Matty Bowman, and I was like, you hope, because you think, are there enough, the people who are going to buy this will buy it on personal order, and how do you get enough of and that's what's kind of good, I think, with this generation of designers, and yes, it's taken time, but they've got out of that and set up
I think that Erdem had to sort of almost go quiet for a while, seemingly quiet, but actually building great strength in the US. And I think that,
the new designers are so
sad,
London catered. And I wonder that it's that kind of millennial thing of being told, you know, you're wonderful, you're brilliant, you're a snowflake. What happens then 10 years down the line with that business?
Because the classic example of that was Medium Kirchhoff, where it was like,
just
could
thinking of
not
them.
have got more press if they tried. Like people loved them, like, you know, all over the style magazines. Like
Their stuff was so expensive.
it was.
it was so, even
it's
its, you know, sample, you know, if you were buying straight from them, still
Unbelievable.
£600.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so expensive. So.
Yeah.
But I was even speaking to Thomas Tate about this, and he said exactly the same thing, where you get so much press, and he's like, it almost becomes irresponsible, because they're writing about you like you're this huge brand, but you're not. It's like you and an intern, and then you're like trying to like churn it out. And I do think that's at least what's good about this generation of designers, and I think someone like Simone Rocher, whose show was amazing, is another really good example of that, where she's like, I know she's very lucky in the sense that she comes from a fashion family, so like not just the kind of financial backing, but more like just the advice.
Yeah, like moral support.
Exactly. But she's a good example of someone who's managed to kind of really...
Yeah, but she was like, I remember like, because I'm very good friends with Craig Lawrence, and I remember like being at the London showroom with him and all the London designers there, and just being like, what? Like Simone's first season in London, and she's already got Brogues, Perspex heels in production, and everyone's like, damn it, like what, you know, you could see.
She's so nice. I love Simone. Yeah, she's amazing.
She makes beautiful things.
Kane is so good for him talking about like making whole dresses from folk types.
Yeah.
And his working class roots, like I feel like class is something that like is so prevalent, but like you say, very implied in fashion, and he's quite overt with, maybe perhaps not in his clothes, but definitely speaking about it. Like obviously Louise Wilson and the fund that he set up in her name, he wouldn't, and he's very open about the fact that he wouldn't have been able to do it had he not had that financial support.
That is something that slightly concerns me about some of the younger designers. It's like a lot of them are very plummy, you know, they come from very nice backgrounds, and that's great, you know, good for them, like, but it does worry me that, and it's interesting, someone like Richard Malone, who's showing at Fashionista, where he talks a lot about trying to sort of like take these working class symbols and kind of reposition them, and that is fascinating. But it does worry me that you think it's going to become less and less common that people can.
Something will happen.
It's just
it'll be
flatter, isn't it? It just gets kind of flat.
And they all know each other as well, so it gets a bit incestuous.
They always know each other. I mean,
but I even find it weird, like the number of people who have brands who aren't from London is getting like less and less and less. Like, I think maybe that's why everyone's got really obsessed with Charles Jeffrey. Obviously, he's really nice as well, and his clothes are good. But like, just because it's a bit of a breath of fresh air, because it does feel increasingly you have conversations with people and they all like went to school together, and you're like, this is so weird. Like,
that's why someone like Claire, like obviously she's amazing, but she's not like, you know, her background's like, I think, you know, she's from up north, but she's like
Claire Barrow. There's a really good interview with her on Show Studio talking about the North as part of our North project.
I haven't seen that.
Check it out, it's very good.
Her model of like being an artist now and just doing like private orders, and like that's really exciting. And I think you're right, a lot of young designers could do with doing more of that.
Funny that she too, like Kane, is so kind of arts and crafts and detailed and attention. It's a proper work process. It's not t-shirts and you know.
But it's the same with someone like a Phoebe English, who I always think doesn't get as much press as she should, because her presentation was so beautiful and her stuff is so beautiful. But I don't know if it's like a wear and tear thing as well. Like, clothes are just everywhere at the moment. I wonder if people almost don't want things that feel too precious. They actually would rather have jeans and a sweater and like.
I do think it's like also to do with that. I know I keep bringing it back to politics, but like politically and economically, everything does seem quite screwed. So I think all you want to do is just like be in AK like this, a huge like a big shirt and hoodie, and just like hide from the world. Whereas like it's more, this is like a more sort of affluent like fantasy, and that kind of fantasy fashion seems to be out right now. And it is definitely like, it's amazing, but it's not trendy.
But then I feel there is a fantasy in fashion. I mean, Milan was like the most glamorous week we've ever seen.
But then it's this kind
and then it went to this crazy Cinderella place. But New York, a lot of the designers there, because obviously they're just thinking impending Trump doom. And they're all talking, you know, that everyone's playing, you know, all these sort of like kind of amazing Californian songs, and it's great. And you know, people like Michael Kors are even saying, you know, on the record, like, you know, we just may as well go out in style. I mean, literally, like, it's so bleak.
Doomsday.
We've got, and they're really going very sort of bohemian and sort of 60s, 70s kind of, you know, dropout culture, really.
That's quite American, though. They're like all out, and we're like, no, we're going to hide on the sofa in our flea-ridden.
Well, they are, but they're making things more, you know, like Alcazar is putting like blueberries and kind of random fruits on snakeskin. They've gone a little bit wacko in places. Well, for them, you know, they're just having fun because they're trying to keep things as light and as buoyant and as playful as possible. So I think you're right, the politics.
But I do think
it makes you want to be in a shirt, but it also somehow does make you want to dress up, which I think what Needham Kirchhoff was all about, which is that sort of kind of the end days type, let's go
But
down with
is
a
this
Blitz Club kind of thing.
sincerity as well to it, like definitely with like obviously like king of maximalism is like Alessandro Michele Gucci, and I do think it's this thing with like being obsessed again. Like I think for a while, like you said, it really will, like fashion took itself so seriously, and I think it's true, like it became very cool, and it's still going, I guess, with the whole Vetmont thing, but it became so cool to be nonchalant or, you know, almost like oppressively chic and minimal, that actually something that's more cluttered, there's a warmth to it, and I wonder if that warmth appeals.
It's more difficult than pulling off a Vetements look. It's more fearless, and it's braver, and it's more difficult. It takes more effort.
Yeah, because minimalism is seen as such a high concept, but actually it's just way easier to put on.
It's just health goals, isn't it? It's just like your dressing gown and whatever. It's way easier to put on. It's way easier to put together and be like, oh, haven't you got lovely taste? Wonderful taste you have, because you've got like.
But it's like those girls, you know, those Instagrams that are all the same, where it's like a diptyque candle and then like a flower on a white tape, and it's like it's quite easy to live that kind
Coffee
of refined,
first.
nice, do you know what I mean?
Like whiteboarding in your magazine.
But then something like Gucci, like it actually, the reason I find it really intriguing is there are actually like millions of references and obsessions and interests behind that. Like, you know, Alessandro Michele's partner, what he's interested in, and his academic background, or their home, or the antiques they collect, or the films that they've watched, and it's like minimalism, you can have, it can be quite surface because you don't need to say like.
It's exactly, it's so, even like with like publishing Mushpit, when we were first doing it, all the trendy magazines were like doing a whiteboard and black and white cover of a girl like doing this or something, and then like we were doing something very like uncool, and then we kind of stuck to it, I guess, and like obviously we got an art director, which massively helps because it's within design, but like we are very anti-whiteboarders, and you won't see a whiteboard.
I remember when you first started it on Facebook, you'd be like, does anyone know how to use InDesign?
Sure.
And it was a cracked version. I still have a cracked version of InDesign, but yeah, it was very DIY.
But like Molly, that's what we were saying. That's so much more than personality.
Exactly. And then you're like, thank God it's come back around.
You want to be one of Molly's girls. You know, less so like, I don't care to wear like a plain camel coat or whatever. It doesn't feel right now. Kind of eclectic.
Do you think that relates to sort of feminism as well? I was thinking about this a lot, just like if you compare something like The Gentlewoman to something like Mushpit, and I wonder if that, if it is just a different generation of women who've kind of grown up and are now maybe writing or making their voices heard in some way, where they don't equate being sort of in any way chilly or severe with being a feminist. Like I think for a long time it was like, to be like an intelligent woman you had to be quite poised, whereas now, and very sexless, whereas now I think this idea that you can be kind of flirtatious, or I don't know, I wonder if that's changed.
And I think also we're quite like, because like a lot of Mushpit or whatever is quite satirical and almost like aggressive. We get told we're aggressive a lot, and someone even said to like an unnamed person to one of us,
love these unnamed people,
was saying something about oh God, you're being so direct, is it because you're afraid of being seen as feminine? And I mean, there's so many things wrong with that sentence, but I think it's like we were saying, it's something dressed us up as something else. So something so floral and girly at first is very sweet and inoffensive, but then looking beneath that, you can have the aggression in that, and that's even more powerful, I think, sometimes than just like a good shoulder.
Well, it's like Dolly Parton. She's like, she was the first woman to like to own the rights to her own records and royalties and stuff. And very disarming. You turn up looking like a dolly, and then you absolutely clean up, and people just think, oh, we're going to be up. She's. But
I think it's also just this choice, this idea that like you don't have to look a certain way to be a smart. Well, I think I do think that sounds really obvious, but I think for a long time people didn't feel like that.
I don't wear flat shoes really, and I'm constantly judged for that. I feel that when I walk into a room, like I was super
wear heels.
Pretty much all the time.
And you find people that
people kind of you're gonna get looked down your nose at, especially like you say, like a young woman in a workplace, like being a journalist, people taking you seriously because they see you. Normally my handbag's about this big. Do you know what I mean? But I just can't give a fuck.
Well, they see you as too dressy.
Yeah, I think so, and I think London.
Well, they think you've tried too hard. I think there's this thing of like, you don't try.
And London's bad for that. London's always like, dress down. They kind of keeps people, like, and Kane, I suppose that's why his dresses were probably so exciting, because it was really dressy. You couldn't get around it. Even if you wore those with a pair of trainers, like those fluoro bandeau dresses, like so effeminate. And that was really powerful statement.
But he does say that as well, this idea that, like, why can't you wear a mini skirt and also be like an amazing, successful, brilliant woman?
You can do whatever you want. I mean,
but I think we say that, but it's really hard.
Putting it
And
into
I do
practice.
think fashion actually forces that back on women. This like it doesn't say to them always like you can wear whatever.
Well,
and
it
be-
presents an
all the top women
opportunity.
designers like Stella, Phoebe
Yeah.
Philo, who's the one that Chloe, what's her name?
Claire White Colour.
Yeah, like they're all very of
Yeah.
that beautiful, like
It's
it's
together.
But it's intimidating. I
But they
find
were
it
merging into one
intimidating.
person. I mean, like, come on. I mean, they were all. I mean,
Victoria
the
Beckham.
collections were
Yeah.
anyway. I think the thing is, in 2008, when the recession hit, I think it's got a lot to do with class as well. I think that when, you know, I saw the kind of the catwalks get absolutely, they became polarized really. Around 2008, it was either, right, let's go kind of like all out, more bang for your buck, maximalist. And then Phoebe realised that actually the way to dress was this less sort of conspicuous way of being rich. You know, diamonds weren't, you know, cognac diamonds were through the roof because women that did have money, that maybe had a friend who was, you know, had a husband who was a banker who might have just lost all of his whatever, then she could keep on buying diamonds, but they were a little bit more low key. So there was a lot of this going on, and I was writing a lot of kind of reports for people on this inconspicuous consumption. Net-a-Porter stopped delivering in Net-a-Porter branded boxes to the office. They started wrapping them in brown paper bags, so brown paper parcels, so women could get things delivered at work and not have other women go, my husband's just got the sack and you're still getting whatever delivered, your Manolos or whatever. So there was all this sort of undercover, how can we get women to spend money without looking bourgeoisie, when actually the most bourgeoisie, ironically the most bourgeoisie look was Celine. So minimalism is almost like a sort of bourgeoisie guilt trip. It sort of has its roots in modernism, so it's sort of like, okay, this is how like working class people dress. No decoration, but actually it's all fake. It's like the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus was supposed to be designed for all, but actually it was just for a bunch of hippies that slept with one another and made pottery that never went into mass production. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? But nothing that the Bauhaus made ever went into mass
It's
production.
all about like, Celine is like the equivalent of like a tiny coffee. Like it looks chic and cool, but like if you can afford a big coffee, just get
get
that.
the big coffee, it's funner, it lasts longer.
It is like, but you're right, the class thing is so interesting.
So
And
what
then
they're doing
even
it, so
Celine
it
has
looks
changed
like
slightly.
you're not dressing up, but then this is all, now we're on to that now, and then
It's faux modesty, essentially.
faux
Yeah,
modesty,
it is.
exactly.
But what about then, so we're talking about
And I love the
people-
Bauhaus, just to sort of say.
caveat.
You always,
You don't.
it's like you can bet more on Bauhaus, always on the
No, but I think it's important that these movements that are born out of apparent social kind of, you know, they're socially driven, but they're actually created by middle class, upper class people that are trying to sort of create this design for all and appear to be democratic, when actually, you know, the Celine look, that, you know, that tuxedo, you know, that jacket and the big obnoxious bag, ironically it became the most obnoxious of looks, and actually just going, fuck it, let's just look like I might have money, I might not have money, but it's that playing with the system and saying, you're wearing heels, you're dressing up, it gets people's backs up, but then you're like, I'm going to do it even more. There is a slight sort of...
But what about
Antagonism.
this whole like unisex dressing then? So we're saying, you know, that women are, there's all this femininity around. Do you think this whole unisex uniform that people keep harping on about, not just in terms of vêtements, like does that actually have legs? Do people want to really dress androgynously?
Well, I think it's weird that that's come along at the same time as these broader gender debates, because a lot of these gender debates are not actually about everyone looking the same. So it's really weird. Like there is a lot of talk about gender fluidity or
But why does that mean
the trans
uniform?
movement. And and I don't think actually, if you actually listen to a lot of the voices within that, no one's saying that they want everyone to look like, you know, the first competition of the Hunger Games, where it's just all this unisex dressing is like everyone looks the same. It's really weird that they've kind of, and they're often written about in tandem in journalism. It's like, oh, gender fluidity and the unisex, and I'm
Always
like,
in
they're not
tandem.
actually really related.
They're
Like,
always in tandem.
yeah.
It's like in a desire to like, express your gender, that you would start to mute it. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I think it's a marketing tool.
Counter-androgyny is like where you actually deliberately want to look like another gender, or you know, like what the Queen did a lot. You know, it's that exchange. Yeah, exactly. It's very like Blitz Club kind of spirit.
But I think it's a really easy way of big high street brands of showing they're progressive while selling product that is always going to sell, because it's like it's t-shirts and jeans. It's probably things that they already had designed and they've just like put a genderless label. So it's like they can equate themselves with being progressive without having to, you know, take a risk on a product that might not sell. Like that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, in a tokenistic and very safe way.
Yeah, it is that safe. It's like flying under the radar. It's like being, you know, in the know and looking fashionable and stylish, but actually not doing anything, not being political, being apolitical, being not having a gender.
I also think it's
really interesting what you say about muting, because it's that minimalism again. It's almost like, let's just play down what sex we are, but nobody wants to play down what they are. Everybody just wants to play.
Some people do, but they probably don't want to be marketed at to do. Do you know what I mean? Like
that's what I mean.
I don't just like wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and now suddenly you're, you know, post health goth normcore Instagram, you know, vêtements.
But I did have this because I've always worn a lot of menswear. I just like menswear. I just like it. And increasingly, trousers. Like menswear trousers, they like cut nicer, the fabric's better. I just like menswear.
It's better quality.
And recently, like a lot of people, like there was this weird thing where I wrote a piece about wearing menswear for the FT. And then off the back of that, a lot of people started asking me for quotes if they were doing, it became a trend, you know, women wearing menswear, cool, great. But like
trend-setting yet again.
I know, obviously, look at me, amazing. But it became this big thing where people kept like asking me about like the political undertone of it, and it made me think, oh, is there one? Am I being? And then I was like,
maybe there isn't.
I don't actually think there is, and I wish I could be like some like. But for me, it's like it's just a purely aesthetic thing. Like I guess maybe there's a part of it where you feel a little bit kind of, you know, just like insolent buying something that's like not, and I like wearing stuff where it's like maybe other people don't have it, but there's definitely not this attempt to like fight anything by doing it, and I definitely don't want to be marketed back as, you know, like someone would be like, but it became so political, that thing. It's strange.
I guess it's coming back to this idea of it's journalism, isn't it? People want there to be a hook. People want there to be some sort of story behind, you know, you're fighting this. When actually, like you said, they're just better quality, and you just prefer them as clothing. Then sometimes it isn't a story.
And I also cover the menswear. It's like what I see and I like it. And yeah, sometimes it just,
it's branded content's fault, all of it.
It is all branded content.
It is because big business, you know, gender, politics, activism, whatever, they're like trendy buzzwords. They're like, and they're that piece about how empowerment no longer means anything because it's been so bandied around.
Oh my god, have you seen that advert? I can't actually remember the name for the brand. It's got loads of like it girls and like those fashion people in it. It's for like maybe it's Zalando.
Oh my god, yeah, on the bus stops.
Oh my god. No, but have you seen the TV advert? It made me so angry, like so furiously angry that I had to turn off the TV. It's like literally an advert for a retailer. And it's like these girls, and it started, and I thought it was an advert for like, first I thought it was like a feminine hygiene product, and then I thought it was an advert for like a women's charity, because they're saying things like, it's like cut between them like walking down the street, and then they're like saying things like, you know, my body is mine and I shouldn't be judged for that, like, you know, I should be allowed to wear what I want. And then it's like, Zalando, buy some clothes. And I'm like, you've literally used like this just language of impact, like, that's gonna,
so
and I just think it's really, really bad. It's like constant commodification of like feminism
and of your values.
But people
it's taking values and
You
morals.
see it in everything now, like everything, like deodorant adverts, everything. It's like,
it's
you're
not
a
just
feminist if you like
buy
this dry shampoo. It's like, what? I hate it.
But I think that sort of, you know, the Always commercial that won all those awards, you know, for like those young teenage girls saying, you know,
femvertising or whatever, I can't throw like a girl on
exactly,
that shit.
Like a girl. Like, and I think
but
everyone's
like, stop using like blue liquid in advert for like, you know, sanitary pads.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, that would probably be a better thing to do than having like a child talk about like throwing a ball.
Why is wearable tech? Why does wearable tech still look so shit? Why does nobody wear wearable tech? Why is digital art like lagging so far behind? And it's because big business is there. Like, it's all big business. That's why I think, you know, virtual reality has come on so much quicker than, say, wearable tech, because it's for the porn industry, essentially. That is what it's there for, and big business can get behind that. Like, you know, I can't believe that like all the fashionista lot aren't involved in different textures and more innovative fabrics and
It's so behind wearable tech. Like,
we just shouldn't be where we are right now. It doesn't make any sense.
But it's because the designers that have the best ideas don't have any money, so they don't they can't do something that's going to be...
No. So they're doing t-shirts because you can sell them for 70 quid, wholesale even.
But I think it's interesting, like you said, they're missing a trick there, aren't they?
Just a gaping. I think about it more than I should.
So, but it's a similar kind of thing probably in like music and cinema. You know, there's films, there's musicians that are coming out, creating records, all with messages of like feminism behind them, empowerment. You know, there's no less commodification going on in cinema than there is going on in fashion. It's just everyone's sort of like trying to sort of...
I don't even think it's in fashion. I think it is big businesses.
It's
just
like
brands.
cosmetic
brands, like drinks
but
brands.
Even on Instagram,
Everything.
like you can make a collective in 1 second, and then you're like, empowerment feminism sponsored by XX brand, and it's so confusing.
It's everywhere.
Like, I understand if you're trying to subsidize something you've already built with that. Everyone has to do that. Obviously, we're ad-free, but we do ad-y things because we have to. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. But when you haven't even made anything yet, then you're being sponsored by a brand to what? Take a picture of yourself. So saying you're feminine. It's so annoying.
It's just capitalism, isn't it? Just trying to sort of take over.
But then you have to...
It's depressing.
It's fine, but it is
neoliberalism.
If Christopher watches this, he's going to be like, what?
I did some really nice shoes, and no one talk about it.
But then it says you have to be agile, don't you? And you have to respond to those. And because like what you do with Mosh Pit and what we do with Babyface is like try and get young women paid. If those big businesses are saying, here's some money, produce, then we're like, fine, we'll take it. And then those people can go off and put that money into projects that they want. That is like our primary aim. And obviously sometimes it's nice to work with some brands, some individuals that you have a genuine connection with. And sometimes you're like, if that's how it is now, then get paid. Get paid.
Yeah, but then I don't know, it really worries me because I think like the best journalists now are just like selling out and doing like writing for like big, it's just like every
What do you mean
bit
for
of,
corporate?
Yeah, every bit of content is sponsored by a brand now. Like everything.
Whole
like
publications are just brand
Influencer culture, and it's just like already like everyone's an influencer for everyone, and I hate that word now. Like I got like, even an Instagram DM from no, never mind. But
no, I really know. What happened?
I'll tell you after. But it was just brand related, and it was like be in our campaign and do this, and I was like, well, no. And also like, are you going to pay me? No, we're just going to give you some free stuff, and then you post about it on your... No! What does that give me? Like, what is the exchange?
It's scary that the next generation might become used to those kinds of transactions whereby you're paid in clothes or likes.
But they're paying, but you're like doing advertising.
But I'm like, clothes aren't going to build you a pension.
Cool, don't pay the bills.
Like, build a house with your like Coach handbag.
I'm the bag lady. I live in my handbag.
Literally, I live in my like.
But I think there's such consciousness though, like kind of rising. You know, more people coming through. I think it's just going to get really, really exciting. And I just think,
good positive note.
I think let these brands pay. They'll always chase up and try and emulate zeitgeist and try and get in. It's been happening for years. You know what I mean? You know,
it's like
Sex
more
Pistols signed to a
that's
record label.
Actually,
There's always
like,
been sort of
bringing it back to Chris again. That is why I like a brand like this, because it's like
fly low.
Yeah, just fly. But also he doesn't.
He's kind of out of it all.
I also just don't. You don't see him
It
giving like stuff
over.
to girls to wear on their like there's celebrities who wear it on the red carpet and stuff, but it's not like the day of the show you suddenly see like a fleet of 20 girls like posting their new, some shows it's literally like that, and they're all sat on the front row, and like it's always really slippery. You're like, are they paid to be there, or are they just paid in their clothes, or like what?
Super
like,
non-inclusive.
Yeah, it's just
intimidating.
really, and I just feel like he kind of doesn't take part.
He's not
in
very,
that.
like all the other front rows. His isn't a particularly like celebrity front row.
No.
You like the Marc Jacobs and Miu Miu and Prada maybe a little bit more, even though they're quite like chic brands still. But his is very. Yeah, I like that about him.
I think there's an authenticity. I think that's what we're talking about here again.
He's
in
just
terms
like a
of
normal person.
a normal person, and I actually know that he could make and cut and make a lot of these pieces himself, and with a couple of other people. There are other people they're showing that are creating absolutely phenomenal pieces at Fashion Week, but I know they probably have got a team making that.
Yeah.
You know, for example, when I saw the J.W. Anderson collection, incredible, but I'm like, well, I don't know, could Jonathan make that on his own?
That's the man that said to me in the Bond interview, I could not cut you a dress for love nor money.
That's what I mean, though. But
This is honest.
But at the moment, his work is so much about shape and silhouette. It's phenomenal. It's sculpture.
But he's a
phenomenal.
curator. Yeah.
He's a curator,
Like,
but it's really like, that's why I'm fascinated when, you know, that Raf, that Dior and I documentary, and you saw him there, and I'm thinking, gosh, I mean, creating couture, but not actually like doing any of it yourself.
Yeah.
It's sterile.
It's kind of, I love Raf, so I'm like, just give him a wide berth and everything.
Of course.
But, because I think he's a genius, but I do think it lacks, like you said, that sort
Like
of
we're
hand
saying,
touch.
like, oh, you know, he's got the gingham in there because of his mum, the apron, the workwear she used to wear, or like he fits everything on Tammy. There's like still that narrative. It still really feels really family. You're saying you can see Scotland in it, you can see these things in it. You don't see the audience. There's no kind of like clear, this is who he's trying to sell to this season. It's like, this is Christopher if you want to buy into it.
It doesn't look like it's built off a marketing report, which increasingly collections do. Like, you look at them
Insight.
and you're like, oh, you needed to slot that in.
Yeah, how many Bowie references?
Yeah, exactly.
But I know he could make a lot. You know, it's that hand-touched feel that actually, it's all very well seeing all this work and all these ideas, but I think there's a real sort of like, there's got to be sort of like a sell-through, like this design. I mean, I know we're in the age of the creative director at the moment, but I think he's just a bit of a rare breed, because he can actually, like, it feels like kind of authentic.
Well, he makes it look like hard work, which is a really unfashionable thing to do at the moment, because it's like everyone's meant to think that you can just like start an Instagram and
So are these
become
Crocs
a cool
then?
kid.
They are Crocs, some of them, yeah. They're marbled Crocs.
I can't actually get on board with those,
No,
but
I
the rest of the
can't
collection is
I mean, yeah, you were saying, you know, he does ugly really well.
Yeah.
Jury's out on that one, but but you know, but Crocs like an emblematic ugly shoe.
Yeah,
it's a
he's
little
doing
bit
that.
obvious.
Yeah.
That's that cheekiness
Possibly.
you're talking about. There is, it's not without humour. It's not without, you know, he's putting like a velvet ball gown essentially with a pair of fishnets and Crocs.
It's weird, the references. When you were on his Instagram before, it looked like it's Catholicism references, which is quite interesting.
Oh, can we talk about that Polaroid
I
jacket?
saw
That
that,
Polaroid
yeah.
jacket was
Yeah,
amazing.
the Polaroid's amazing. So it's a good collection. Has it inspired us? And
Can we have another quick look through it? If
Yeah,
that's all right.
zoom through. I'm conscious of time because we've been going on for
I know, we have.
absolutely ages. It's absolutely fine. I can stay here all day. Yeah, you can see like this. It looks like a saint on the top.
Yeah.
Kind of like, but trust him to take something and then twist it.
And those look like, the bodies underneath look kind of like glass windows, so like gridding.
And the black, but it's kind of this mourning, you know. I think
It's heavy.
Yeah. I like it. I
Me
think
too.
it's
I
good.
think it's really good.
But yeah, like you were saying though, Lou, it's tapping into that sort of slightly kind of it's naughty, you know, because once you get involved with the Catholic Church, you've got to do like you've got to do a lattice. You've got to do a confession box and a latticed window. And
When I went there recently, it was just like horrible how kind of I mean, obviously it is the like holiest place on earth, but I've never been so
Unholy.
aware of like any like
Flesh.
It's like covering yourself
Yeah.
up.
But it's very.
But being totally covered can be really sexy, right? That's
But it's
one of
this
the
kind
things
of
he does.
weird, like slightly like schoolgirlish, like, you know, the little like hat. It's a bit uniform.
Like you're saying, that kind of
Coquettish.
half-dressed a bit.
it's all coquettish is a really good word for him. and how
well, I
he
mean,
works.
I know that. I mean, we were talking about Lucia earlier on, and obviously when we did another Project Ugly, check that one out.
Yes.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
You know, I know he doesn't copy Prada, but there's so much of her in his work in terms of that idea, like you said, of, you know, being covered, being sexy, wearing a cardigan, wearing a dress, and just all that kind of stuff. And it has got that sort of, it's
like-
very layered, and it's very,
Sort of, it is cerebral, isn't it? It's like the thinking man's crumpet.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like saucy,
Exactly.
but bookish.
bookish, yeah.
Matilda.
The
Saucy
muse.
Matilda.
Saucy Catholic Matilda.
And these
up
sort of
Matilda.
these sort of like doily flowers that they were kind of in his last collection when he was doing all those feathers. And
Yeah.
stuff.
Really Prada as well, those flowers.
Very Prada. Like she did lace, obviously, because she hated lace. Then he did that fluoro lace collection.
But I think flowers is his ultimate thing, which is what, again, it's so funny because flowers is such a cliche of fashion, but he like takes the theme and like rips it up and dissects it and explores, like we've done like the science models of flowers, we've had like flowers as embellishment, we've had flowers as a graphic, we've had flowers embroidered, you know, he just takes this reference and...
If you were a graduate now and you're like, my thing's going to be florals.
Yeah, everyone would be like,
groundbreaking.
Yeah. For spring.
But it's taking something saccharine and making it twisted.
Yeah. I'm conscious we could go on forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
But should we give him a round of applause to
Yeah,
wrap things up?